So hello everybody and welcome to the Michael's Community Classroom. As Allie said, my name is Marley Bird. I am a knitwear and crochet designer and ambassador for Yarnspirations Yarn, and I love doing these classes. They're a lot of fun to do. So show of hands, all of you that are here, whether you want to click the hand on the screen or whatever, how many of you are experienced knitters? Like you have fun knitting and you're just, yay, it's always good. Woo! Awesome. So many of you saying hello. Good. How many of you have made ornaments before? Like I haven't made that many ornaments for real. Like this is going to be one of my first knit ornaments I've made. And conveniently enough, it's very, very easy. So we're going to be in this together. It's no problem. As far as I know, Allie, have they all received the pattern, or do you have a link for them to be able to get the pattern?
Yes, so you should have received the pattern online before the class, a link to it, but I will also be dropping the PDF into the chat here as well.
Okay, awesome. So you guys will have the pattern. Honestly, as we're working together through the pattern, you'll be able to get it pretty easily. So I'm assuming you have the tools you need as far as a pair of size 5 knitting needles. I will be using some double pointed needles just because they're easier to show on camera, but you can use straight needles for sure. And then 4 different colors of yarn, ideally green for your pickle, red for your Santa hat with the white for the Santa fur essentially in the palm. And then there's just this little charcoal color for the mouth and the lips. So it's pretty easy, but you can really use any color you want. So if you wanted rainbow pickles, you could do a rainbow pickle. It could be whatever you want it to be. So we're going to keep it really easy and straightforward for this. It's 8 o'clock where I am, and we're going to just have some fun. So I've already worked up part of the pickle, but we're going to set that aside and we'll get to that part later. Can everybody hear me just fine? Because I'm going to bring my microphone over just a little bit just to make sure you guys can hear me. And so let's see here. I'm going to grab my green yarn. And let's see, continue. Here we go. Awesome. And I have my needles here. So I'm using size 5. And like I said, I'm just using double points because it's easier for me to show them on camera. You do not have to use double points for this. You can use just straights or circulars, but this is easy for me to use. And we're going to begin with the instructions for the pickle. So we use color A, and in the instructions they say that that's the spring green. So I'm just using a green yarn here, and I'm going to cast on 6 stitches. Now you can use any cast on you wish for this. I prefer the long tail cast on, but if you wanted to do a different cast on, you absolutely could. For the long tail cast on, you put a slip knot directly onto your needle, make your tail go over here towards the right, I'm sorry, right and left, towards the left side, and the working yarn towards the right. And we're going to put the tail over our thumb and the working yarn over our finger, and then grasp the 2 ends. And then we're going to cast on 6 stitches. Now, like I said, if you want to use a different cast on, you absolutely can. We're going to go up the thumb, down the finger, through this window, and then off the thumb. Up the thumb, down the finger, through that window, off the thumb. So there's 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, so we have 6 stitches on here. I've left a little bit of a long tail, which I can use for seaming later, or I can leave a long tail when we get up here to the top and use that for seaming. Now the instructions tell us we're supposed to knit this first row, and this first row is also the right side. So I will go ahead and just simply knit all of these stitches. Can you guys see that all right? Looks like I'm doing all right. We're going to knit 6 stitches. Once you get those 6 stitches on there, what you could do is you could grab a little stitch marker and just put it into the fabric on that side before you turn. just so that you can remember that that's the right side. Another way to remember, if you use the long tail cast on, your tail is over here towards the right of your project. So that lets you know that this is the right side of your project. Everybody with me so far? Okay. So we knit the 6 stitches, put the yarn in our other hand, put our needle in the other hand. And now we're going to do what's called a knit front and back into each stitch. And that means we're going to increase into each one of those stitches. So to work a knit front and back, you'll go into the stitch and you will knit it just like you normally would, but we're not going to let that stitch jump off, okay? We're going to extend that yarn that we knit, swivel our needle around, and then put our needle into the back leg of that same stitch. And then we're going to yarn over that needle, pull that needle through. So now we've knit through the back leg, and then let the needle or that stitch jump off the needle. So see how I have 2 stitches now where before I only had 1. Okay, I'm gonna do that again. I'll hold my yarn in the other hand this time so you guys can see. You go into the stitch, yarn over my needle, come out the stitch, extend, swivel my right hand needle around, go into the back leg of that same stitch, yarn over my needle, and pull that yarn over through the stitch so that I've knit it. Now I'll let this stitch jump off my needle. All right, into the stitch, yarn over my needle, come out the stitch, extend, swivel around, go into the back leg of that same stitch, knit again, and then let that stitch jump off. In, around, out, extend, swivel around, go into the back leg, knit through the back leg and off. You do this into each one all the way down. You're going to be very familiar with knit front and back after these couple rows. So at the end of this row, we will have 12 stitches. Okay. All right. We turn our work. On this row, we're going to increase again, but we don't want to increase in every one of the stitches. We're going to increase in the first, we will knit 1 in the first stitch. We'll increase in the second one, and we'll keep doing that 5 times. So it'll be knit 1, knit front and back, 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 and then it'll be 2 knit front and backs. Okay. How are we feeling? Okay, so it says right now, some people feels like they're lost. I'm going to keep going until I can get to the seed stitch portion, and then I'll go back and I will re-show this. Okay, you guys. So I'll make sure that you are back to this point. I'm going to keep going at right now, but we will go back and I will show all that one more time. Okay, I promise. All right, so now we're going to do an increase. First, we do a knit 1 and off. And now we're going to increase. So we're going to knit front and back. So knit through the front leg and then knit through the back leg and off. So that was 1. We want to do that a total of 5 times. So we'll knit 1, knit through the front leg, knit through the back leg and off. That was 2. Knit 1, knit through the front leg, knit through the back leg. That's 3. Knit 1, knit through the front leg, knit through the back leg. That's 4. Knit 1, knit through the front leg, knit through the back leg. That's 5. Now we're going to do a knit front and back into each one of those. So we'll knit into the front, knit into the back of the first one, and then we do that again for the last one. Knit to the front. Whoops. Jumped off my needle before it was time. If I can get it back on there. I'm going to put that last stitch back on because it's not fiddly. There we go. And then knit through the back. So at the end of this row, I should have 19 stitches. So what I've done here is I've essentially shaped the bottom of the pickle. And so I have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 19. And it's important we have an odd number because it will make it so that every single row for the next 3.5 inches will all start off the same way. Okay, so we're on row 4. And row 4 is what you repeat until this whole thing measures 3.5 inches. So let me get through row 4 and then I'll go back and I will show how to do all of this again, okay? Because that'll give all of you time to knit some. So on row 4, you will knit 1, and then it's a repeat of purl 1, knit 1. And so this will be what you repeat all the way down. And you might think to yourself, well, Marley, this is just like a knit 1, purl 1 ribbing. Well, it would be if we were going to stack our knits and stack our purls every row. But what will happen is with this odd number, you will actually get the opposite. You will put knits on top of purls and purls on top of knits to get a seed stitch. Okay, so let me get down this row. I'm not very good with the yarn in my right hand, so it takes me a little bit longer. I apologize if I am taking too long to get down the row. The other thing I want to make sure I teach in here is if you accidentally mess up on your seed stitch, I'm going to show you how to fix it. So that will be a bonus here at the end of the class, because that is important, I feel like. Okay. You'll end with a knit 1. You'll turn your work. And remember when I said because we're an odd number, we'll be able to start off the same we did last time. So we started off with a knit 1 and then we jumped into purl 1, knit 1. But notice if we start off with a knit 1, it goes right into that purl stitch right there. And so that will mean that we're already starting off with our seed stitch. So we want to make sure that we are always putting our knits into a stitch that has that purl bump, and we're putting the purls into all of our knit stitches that look like they have that V. All right, so there's a purl bump there, so we're going to make sure we put our knit there. So that's our knit 1. Don't forget to go between your needles for the purl. See how there's no purl bump there? That's a knit stitch. So we're going to purl it. There's a purl bump there, so we know we're going to knit it. Can you see this? So if you're ever like stuck and you're just like, oh, I'm not sure which stitch I'm on, take a look at the stitch you're working into. If it's a knit, you're going to purl it. And if it's a purl, you're going to knit it. Does that make sense? If you don't do that, if you don't do the opposite of what the stitch is on your left-hand needle, you will end up getting ribbing instead of seed stitch, which is fine if that's the look you're going for. But the look of this pickle is actually seed stitch. So you want to do the knit 1, purl 1 and get the seed stitch look. And the seed stitch is all about knits on top of purls and purls on top of knits. I think this is the fastest I've ever done a knit and purl row with my yarn in my right hand. Okay, can you see how that gives you the seed stitch look? I'm going to show you this one. This is what you're getting. Can you see all the bumps there? So those are your purl bumps, and because they are staggered on top of the knits, that's why we get that really cool look. Can you see that? Okay, so obviously at this point where we were over here, you continue working on these 19 stitches until it measures about 3.5 inches. Okay, so those of you who are at this point, go ahead and keep working, keep doing your seed stitch, keep going along. And I'm going to take a second here and I'm going to go back and show how to do all of this one more time because I have enough time to do that. Okay, Allie, you all right with that?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay. All right, good. Because I know there are some people who were lost, so I'm going to go back and easy come, easy go, y'all. I'm just going to take it off and start over. Boo, boo, boo. All right. So we are going to cast on 6 stitches. Do you guys want me to show the same cast on or show a different one? Just curious what everybody wants. Nobody's really saying a whole lot. You do want to start off with a slip knot onto your needle. All right, I see somebody says a different one. All right, okay, so we'll do a knitted cast on. How about that? So I have the slip knot on my needle, and then we're just going to knit into that one stitch there. So I will go into the stitch as if to knit, and I will actually knit it. And then I extend that knit stitch. With my left hand needle, I'm going to swivel and scoop that stitch back on. So now I have 2 stitches. Everybody see that? So we're going to do that. Sorry, we're going to do that again. I'm going to go into the second stitch now. I'm going to go in, yarn around my needle, come out, extend, swivel my left hand needle around and come underneath that stitch and scoop it right onto my right hand needle or my left hand needle. In, around, out, extend, swivel, and scoop. In, around, out, extend, swivel, and scoop. In, around, out, extend, swivel, and scoop. All right, so there are 6 stitches right there. Yes, there are many different ways to cast on. There's actually a book out there with over 40 different cast on methods. So there's lots of different ways to cast on. So the scoop is the front part of the loop from the right side. So I'm going to show you one more. I don't need any more stitches. I'm going to show you again. So I'm in, around, out, extend. I need to come with my left hand needle, my scoop, I'm coming around and it's like I'm going underneath it. Can you see that? I don't want to just like go like this, like go right into it like that because it doesn't twist the stitch on the bottom. It makes it not very correct. So I don't want to go straight down and put it on. I want to go underneath and scoop it up. Can you see the difference? So I don't want to do this. I want to go underneath and scoop it up. And that puts it on my needle. Okay. So that's called the knitted cast on. The knitted cast on. All right. So once we have those 6 stitches on there, and again, if you want to do a different cast on, you absolutely can. You can use whatever cast on you wish. Once you get those 6 stitches on there, then we're going to knit the first row. So this time, because I'm not turning my work because everything's already on there, this will be the right side of my fabric. And this time, the right side of my fabric, my tail, is over towards the left. Can you see the difference there? So if I wanted to use my marker to mark this as the right side, I could do that. Or I could just remember it's on the left-hand side, my tail is. Whatever works for you, okay? All right, can you see that? So I've knit 6 stitches. Now I'm going to put that needle into my left hand. Again, I turn it around. And now I'm on row 2. And row 2 is where I have to take these 6 stitches and turn them into 12 stitches. So I'm using an increase called knit front and back. So the knit front and back increase is just like this. I'll show you how to do it in English first, and then I'll show you how to do it continental. You go into the stitch, and we will knit through the front leg. Now I want to take this same needle before I drop that stitch off my left hand needle, and I want to swivel my right hand needle around and stick it into the back leg of that same stitch. and then I will knit it through the back leg. Once you have knit through that one stitch 2 times, once in the front leg, once in the back leg, then you let it jump off. I'll show you one more time. I go in the front leg, so I knit it just like normal and come out, but now I swivel my right hand needle around and go into the back leg of that same stitch and knit through the back leg and then off. Okay, here we go. Here we go. I'm doing it continental now. I go into the front leg and I knit through the front leg, swivel around, go into the back leg and knit through the back leg. Knit through the front leg, swivel around, knit through the back leg. Yes, this will definitely cause your stitches to be a little bit snug. One thing you could do is before you swivel around to go to the back leg, see how I kind of stretch out that stitch from my first knit in the front leg? It will help you get a little bit of extra room as you're going to the back leg. But then you also want to make sure you're always bringing your stitches back up to the body of your needle. Don't leave them down here at the tip, otherwise they get too small. Front leg and back leg. Okay. So now I have 12 stitches. Y'all with me here? So we've just went from 6 stitches to 12 stitches, and we did it using an increase called the knit front and back. Okay. All right, so we're going to do that increase again, only this time we want to get to 19 stitches. And we're going to do that by working a series of knit ones and then knit one through knit front and back. Okay, so we start off, this is row 3. I knit 1 stitch and then I knit front and back. So that was 1. I'm going to do that 5 times. Knit 1 stitch, knit front, knit the back. That was twice. Knit 1 stitch, knit the front, knit the back. Knit 1 stitch, knit the front, knit the back. Knit 1 stitch, knit the front, knit the back. Now in these last 2 stitches, we're going to do knit front and backs into both of them. Knit the front, knit the back, knit the front, knit the back. I'm up to 19 stitches, which is important because I want to have an odd number as I go into row 4, which is where I set up the seed stitch. Okay. So we're going to go into the seed stitch section now. How we doing, Allie?
We're doing good.
Okay. So I'm going to pop back over here to seed stitch. This is where we just transfer back and forth from a knit to a purl. So we start off with our knit. This time I'm going to hold the yarn in my left hand, so I'm doing it continental. And then we purl and knit and purl and knit and purl and knit. And you just continue doing this. So this first row is really our setup, right? And it's the next row that you have a chance to really check and make sure you're doing the seed stitch correctly, because that's when you want to make sure you're knitting your knits and purling your purls. All right, so we're going to get to that. Remember, so we finished with our knit. As I turn my work, if I want to double check and make sure that everything is coming out correctly, I want to make sure that I'm knitting my purls and purling my knits. Did I say that correctly just a second ago? I can't remember. So if I'm looking at a purl, I want to knit it. If I'm looking at a knit, I want to purl it. If I'm looking at a purl, I want to knit it. If I'm looking at a knit, I want to purl it. If I'm looking at a knit, I want to, or I'm sorry, if I'm looking at a purl, I want to knit it. If I'm looking at a knit, I want to purl it. Knit, purl, knit, purl. And remember, because we have an odd number of stitches, because we increased up to 19, we're able to start every single row for this body the exact same way. We start with that knit one, and then you jump into purl one, knit one, all the way down the row. So all of the rows are exactly the same. Okay, so I turn my work. You'll see it's going to be the exact same thing. So I have a purl there. So I start with the knit, which is exactly what I want to do anyways. I have a knit here. So I start with a purl. I jump to a purl. And I just continue doing that. And I do this until this pickle measures about 3.5 inches, which is 9 centimeters. Can you see this? You just want to remember, as you're going from a knit to a purl, move your yarn between your needles so you don't accidentally get a yarn over. Okay. And on this next row, I'm going to purposely make a mistake so that I can show you how to fix it. All right. Because I'm pretty certain, you guys get how seed stitch works, right? Okay. You see how seed stitch works? It's pretty easy. I'm going to purposely make a mistake so that way we can go back and fix it. All right, guys. So actually, I'm going to make the mistake on the other one because it has more fabric and it'll be easier for you to see, if that's all right with you guys. All right, so let's make a mistake on this. You guys see that? All right, so we have this nice bed of seed stitch, but let's say we accidentally lose track and we double up what we're doing here. So I'm just going to come around and I'm supposed to knit, right? Because I'm looking at a purl bump, but I'm going to accidentally purl it. And then this one is supposed to be a purl. So I'm going to go ahead and just be like, oh, okay, I'm good. I'm good. I didn't make a mistake. Everything's fine. So I just continue on a little bit. And then maybe this one is supposed to be a purl and maybe I accidentally knit it. And so I keep going. I'm like, all right, am I okay? Am I good? I don't know if I'm good. It feels like I'm going into some ribbing here. Oh, I'm good. Okay, I'll switch it back and I'll go back. So here I am. I'm getting super confused this row, right? But I think I'm good. Everything looks great on my end at this point. I'm like, sure, that looks awesome. And then I turn my work and I look and I'm like, all right, something's off here. I see 2 purls next to each other. I see 2 knits next to each other. Something's not really right here because now all of a sudden I have some ribbing sort of stuff looking. So you think to yourself, oh man, what do I do? Well, we can fix it. You can either rip back and redo that row, or we can fix those stitches as we come to them. So that's what I'm going to choose to do. I'm going to fix them as I come to them. So I know that this first one is supposed to be a knit, so I'll knit it. And then this one looks like it's supposed to be a purl. Looks like everything's normal there. Okay, that's good. And then I'm in my rhythm. So I have a knit and I have a purl and I have a knit and I have a purl and I have a knit. Okay, so I knit that one and I'm like, oops, something's wrong there. Can you see that? It looks like there's ribbing. So I'm like, okay, that's not right. So I undo that one. So I'm going to take my left hand needle and stick it into the stitch that I just let drop off and let the one I created move. All right, so now I'm looking at this. I'm like, that stitch right there should have been a purl stitch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let that stitch jump off. I'm going to undo it. And then that string there, I'm going to put it in front of that loop. And I'm going to grab that loop. Can you see that? I'm going to put that loop back on my left-hand needle. And then I'm going to show you the best way I can do this. I'm showing you how to do this without a crochet hook, okay? So I want to purl with that loop. So if I go into the stitch that I grabbed, I'm going to yarn over my needle with that loop, and I'm going to pull that yarn over through the loop that I put back on. Does that make sense? And then have it jump off. So now I have a purl. I'm going to show you again. So I'm going to let that stitch jump off. It was a knit stitch, and I'm like, oh no, I don't want it to be a knit stitch. So I let it unravel. I stop it from going any further than just that one row. Okay, I stop it from going any further. Because I know that I want this stitch to be a purl, when we purl, our yarn is in front, right? So that means we know that this strand of yarn here has to be in front, because that's where our yarn is typically when we purl. So we know that we want this strand in front of that loop that we undid. Now I'm going to put that loop back on my left-hand needle. It's actually, that's the stitch, right? I'm going to put that stitch back on my left-hand needle. Now, this strand right there, that's the strand that should be working through that stitch to create my purl stitch. So I'm going to actively purl into that stitch using this strand. Okay, you ready? So I go into that stitch to purl just like I normally would. I take my strand, I'm just going to rest it right on top of my yarn or on top of my needle, and I kind of just hold some pressure to it. And I purl it. You see, just like I purled. And now I can let that stitch jump off my left-hand needle just like I normally would. And now I have a purl stitch there. Now that stitch has not been worked yet, right? Because my yarn is here. My yarn is here. It's attached to that stitch, which means this one has to go back on my left-hand needle. So now what used to be a knit stitch is a purl stitch. I'm back in pattern and I can knit it. Same sort of deal right here. See how I have two purls stacked on top of each other? It shouldn't be like that. That one there, I should be looking at a knit stitch there. So I'm going to do the same thing. Only this time, when I drop that off and I pull that stitch out, okay, there's my loop. I don't want my loop to go anywhere, so I'm going to just grab it and pull it up. Make sure it doesn't go anywhere. My yarn is in front, but if I want to make it a knit, where does my yarn go? When we knit, our yarn is in back, right? So if we want this to be a knit, we're going to move it to the back. So I'm going to move it behind that stitch. So now my yarn is back there. I'm going to put that stitch on my left-hand needle. And just like before, I'm going to knit into this stitch, but I'm going to yarn over with the strand. So I'm going to put the strand up there and then pull it through just like a knit stitch. Put that on my left-hand needle, and now I have a stitch. Everybody with me here? This is one of those things, you can practice this with anything, you guys. This is just fixing mistakes. This is how you fix mistakes. All right. And this is how you fix mistakes without a crochet hook. So even better. But hopefully this makes like logical sense explaining where the strand goes because it's a knit or a purl. All right. And so you always have to remember, once you fix the stitch, put it back on your left-hand needle. And if you don't remember that, you'll know quickly because your yarn is not through that stitch, right? It hasn't been worked yet. Your yarn is still over here on your right-hand needle. So now I can look at this. Okay, I'm back in pattern, so I know I need to purl that. I'm looking at this one. I'm supposed to be knitting this, and I'm looking at two knits. So that was a mistake I made again. So I can fix it. So my initial thought here is like, okay, I'm supposed to be knitting into that, but it is a knit stitch. That means that should be a purl. So what do I need to do? I need to let that stitch drop off and undo just one stitch. So I pull one strand out and I don't let that stitch go anywhere. Okay. Don't let it drop down. Even if it does, we can fix it, right? We know how to fix it now. I want to put that strand in front of the stitch because we want to make it a what? A purl. And where's our yarn when we purl? It's in front. Put that stitch back on my left-hand needle, and now I purl it. So I'll go into it, pick up my strand, pull my strand out of it, let it jump off, and then put that back on my right-hand needle. Now I have a purl. So now I can knit into it. I'm supposed to purl into this one. I messed up again on purpose. So I will undo it. Here's something you guys could do. If you want, before you undo it, you could take your right hand needle and stick it into that stitch that you want to catch anyway, so it doesn't go anywhere. and you just pull it out. Okay. I want it to be, what did I want it to be? I wanted it to be a knit, right? So now I knit it. My yarn is in back and I knit it. I'm looking at a purl, so I knit. I'm supposed to purl this one into a knit. That's right. I'm supposed to knit this one into a purl. That's right. Purl into a knit. That's right. I'm supposed to knit into a purl, but these are two knits. So I know I have a mistake here. So I'm going to be pulling that yarn off. So I let that jump off, pull that strand out. Make sure you grab that stitch so it doesn't go anywhere. Make sure your strand is in front because we're making it a purl. So now my stitch is on my left-hand needle. I'm going to purl it. So I go into it, grab that strand that I pulled out, pull it through the stitch, let the stitch jump off. So now that strand is now the stitch, and put that stitch back on my left-hand needle. And I fixed a stitch. And that, I mean, that's how you fix stitches, you guys. Like I could drop down 5 rows and change all of them if I wanted to. But that's the basics of fixing a stitch. Pretty good? All right. Okay. So now you know how to fix a mistake. Good news, guys. I have a whole class on this on YouTube, like fixing mistakes in seed stitch and everything. So if you are ever stuck, you can totally check those out. But I have this pickle up to 3.5 inches. So I'm going to do the last few rows of the pickle so you can see how this works. So I'm supposed to ending with the wrong side. So I'm supposed to be on a right side. So I need to actually knit one more row to get onto a right side. So I say knit one more row, but I need to work one more row. So I need to work my seed stitch down the row. So that way I'm looking at a right side row. Hopefully I haven't used up all my yarn yet. And I'll be all right. Because I cut off a little section of yarn so that I didn't have to have it attached to the whole ball. Hopefully I'll be okay. We'll see. I wasn't planning on doing those extra rows. Okay, so I'm looking at a right side row. And I'm going to knit one and then knit two together. So just like down here, how we did increases, we're going to do decreases up here. So I knit one and then I knit 2 stitches together. So I have this one stitch that's close to the tip, and the next stitch, I'm going to go into the second one first and then go into the front one. So my right hand needle is through 2 stitches and I knit them together. And then I knit one and then knit them together. I'll do it with the yarn over here. So I knit one and then I knit them together. Knit one, knit them together. Knit one, knit them together. You guys see this? Really hope I don't run out of yarn here. What did I say? So I did knit one, knit two together, knit one, knit together, knit one, knit together, knit one, knit two together, knit one, knit two together, knit one, knit two together. And it says you're going to do that twice. I should get down to 12 stitches. Do I have it? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. I have 13 stitches. I don't know why I have 13 stitches, but we're going to just go with it because I'm not ripping anything out at this point. So we have 13 stitches. Now it says knit 2 together all the way across. So we'll just knit 2 together all the way across and I'll have 7 stitches instead of 6. No big deal. I don't know. I must have forgot to knit 2 together at some point, but I'm not worried about it. I probably did 2 knit ones. Not thinking, because believe it or not, you guys, it's hard to talk and knit and teach all at the same time. All right, so I'm just going to knit 2 together all the way down. I could do a knit 3 together, but it really doesn't matter. So I'll just do a knit 1 to get rid of it. And then it says we knit one more row. So I just knit this row. Then it says cut your tail, leaving a nice long tail, and we thread it onto a tapestry needle. So I have a tapestry needle here, and I'm going to thread it onto there. And then it says to pull these this tapestry needle through all of these stitches. So I'm just going to go through each stitch. I'm just going in just like to purl and essentially just pulling each one off. Pull that through. And it's going to cinch that up. You see that? Okay. Now it says fasten securely and then sew the side seam, leaving an opening for the stuffing. So I have all of this here. I essentially can secure this by pulling this together like in a circle. Can you see that? See, it's like the perfect little circle here. And then I just do a whip stitch all the way around. Like if I wanted to be a little bit more meticulous, I could do a different sort of stitch or whatever, but I mean, it's a pickle, guys. It really doesn't matter too much. But if I wanted to, I mean, I could just like pick up a bar here and then pick up a bar here and just go all the way up, just picking up bars and start to seam it up. And once I get a ways, I can take some stuffing and start to stuff it a little bit. Can you guys see how that works? Okay. See, we have time, so I'm going to just keep going with this. How are we doing with questions? Allie, I feel like you're so quiet over there tonight.
Oh, goodness. There was a question earlier about what brand needles are you using?
I am using a brand called Signature Needles. I like how pointy they are. So, plus I really like how they're bright and shiny silver at the tip. I think they show really well on camera, so I tend to use those a lot. But I really love how pointy they are when I'm knitting little things like this. You guys can see how it's just coming together pretty easily, right? I mean, it's not super difficult. I could probably even, I'm always one, if I'm just doing something small like this to try and, I'm like, how can I make this faster? And then I end up going slower because I'm trying to make it faster and just like, just do it. Just whip this up. Like, it's almost like lacing a shoe, which is kind of funny. I used to work at Just for Feet. I don't know if you guys remember a place called Just for Feet. And I used to work at a I almost said at a place called Foot Locker. I did. I used to work at Foot Locker lacing shoes up all the time. So this brings back lots of memories. But as you get going here, obviously, like I said, in the pattern, you want to make sure you leave a space so that you can stuff it full of stuffing and you'll have your little pickle here. You with me so far? Yeah. No, this is not the Kitchener stitch. I'm honestly, I'm just grabbing a bar. So like the purl bump on one side. And then I'm just grabbing the purl bump on the other side. A Kitchener stitch is a little bit different. I mean, it's close to it, but it's just, this is just me just kind of pulling it together. You can see it just comes together really nice. And those bumps are there, so why not use them? Makes it pretty easy just to pull it together. Once you make the pickle portion, you guys, there's a phrase I never thought I'd say in my life. Once you make the pickle, you then will go on and make its hat. Oh, it sounds funny. So I've already started the hat and I'll show you guys the finishing on the hat too, because I wanted to get to that. But you guys know two different ways to cast on now. When you're making the hat, you cast on 22 stitches using your white color, and then you knit 3 rows, and then you will cut the white and then just continue on working the hat using the red or the color of your hat, whatever you want the hat to be. I mean, it doesn't have to be red. It can be anything you want. So I have already done that. I'm going to leave a little opening up here. Otherwise I will forget because I have done that before. But there's my pickle, y'all. I mean, you can hardly tell that that's seamed together. And there's the front. That's so funny. That looks so cute. There's enough room there for me to shove some stuffing down there, and I have some stuffing. So if we get to that, I'll do that. But so that's that. And then here is the hat. So as I said, I cast on 22 stitches, which you know how to do now. I just knit 3 rows, okay? And then I literally just cut the white and then just started knitting with the red. So there's nothing special as far as changing colors. You just decide you're not going to use one color and start using the next color, okay? So I did that, and then I worked 6 rows of stockinette stitch. And stockinette stitch, for those of you who don't know, on the right side you will knit, on the wrong side you purl. So I just did that. So I'm at the point where it says next row in the pattern. This is my decrease row. All right, so that's where I am in the pattern, just so that we're all in the same place. So it says next row, and it says knit 2 together 11 times, and I'm going to be left with 11 stitches. So we're going to go back to a knit 2 together here. So I will go into the second stitch and the first stitch and knit 2 together. And I'll just do this all the way across. And hopefully this time I won't be left with 1 extra stitch, because I won't forget to do a decrease. But hey, even the professionals make mistakes, guys. So when you have 13 stitches instead of 12 on your pickle, you just say it's okay because Marley did it and you can do it too. All right. I give you permission to have an extra stitch on your pickle. It's okay. As long as it's there in the final rows and you're not messing up your seed stitch. Okay, guys, you want to have an odd number of stitches for your pickle. All right, so I'm knitting 2 together all the way across. There we go. Now it says continue even in stockinette stitch, working from until the beginning measures 3 inches. So now I'm going to continue working until it measures 3 inches. So what I'm doing here is I'm making this portion of the hat. So we're just going to work in stockinette stitch. And while we're doing that, maybe I'll show you guys how to knit backwards. How about that? So that way, if you didn't want to purl, you could just knit backwards. So this first row, I'm going to go ahead and purl because I'm on the wrong side. I'm looking at purls. I'm going to purl them. Yes, Marley made me do it. That's right. All right, so I'm purling all of these stitches. Pretty easy, and it becomes really quick. It's only 11 stitches, right? So then I turn my work, and now I'll go back and I'll knit 11 stitches. And I just keep going back and forth until this whole hat here measures 3 inches. So I'm just going to keep going back and forth. Do you guys want to know how to knit backwards so you don't have to turn and purl? Is that something, or is that too advanced? Like, what do you guys want? Talk to me, Goose. Tell me what you want. Tell me what you want, what you really, really want. Okay. I know. Showing my age, bringing in the Spice Girls. Okay, so let me get across this purl row, and then I'll show you how to knit backwards. See, you're getting more than just pickles in this class. You learn how to how to fix mistakes and how to knit backwards. Okay, so I'm going to knit this row, and the whole idea of knitting backwards is really, instead of turning my work and purling back, I'm just going to knit off of my right hand needle instead of knitting off of my left hand needle. Okay, so this is knitting backwards. This is really convenient if you're doing like entrelac. So it's at this point I typically would turn my work and purl, right? But instead I'm going to knit backwards. So I keep my work in this orientation. I'm going to take my left hand needle and I'm going to go into the back leg of that first stitch. I'm going to take my yarn and go over top of that needle. Can you see that? So even if it was in this hand, I'm going to go over top in this direction. Don't go this way, go over top. Okay. Now I want that yarn over to be pulled through this stitch. I'm just going to knit that stitch. So I pull through, and then I'm going to let that stitch that I went into jump off my right hand needle. So now I have a stitch on my left hand needle. Go into the back leg, over top of the needle, come out the stitch and off. Into the back leg, around the needle, out the stitch and off. I'll show you with the other hand. I can hear some of you like, whoa. Okay. So into the back leg, over top of the needle, out the stitch and off. In, around, out, off. In, around, out, off. In, around, out, off. In, around, out, off. So this is one of those things that if you just have a few stitches to purl back on and you don't want to keep turning your work, it's really convenient. So now all my stitches are back on my left hand needle. I'm ready to knit. So I just knit. And I just never turned my work. Can you see that? So it's great for entrelac, it's great for baubles, it's great for a shoulder of a sweater, and apparently it's great for little Santa hats for a pickle. Okay, so into the back leg, around, out and off. In, around, out, off. And it starts, I mean, if you start doing it, guys, it's one of those things that it becomes pretty rhythmic. Don't fret if you don't get it right away because it takes some muscle memory. Okay, just like when you learn to knit, it just takes some muscle memory to get used to it. But you're just knitting the stitches off of your right hand needle instead of the left. And yes, you can work purls if you needed to, like working backwards to work purls and such. But at that point, I mean, just turn your work. I mean, it's if you're going to combine stitches in that manner, you might as well just turn your work. Can you see that? So I'll just keep doing it. I'll do it again. Everybody's very quiet, so I can't tell if they're like mind blown, if they're trying to do it, or if they're like, this lady's crazy.
I don't, they're like, whoa.
Whoa. You know what's funny is like true left-handed knitters, this is how they knit. Like they knit off of the right hand needle instead of off of the left hand needle. So it's just another form of knitting, right? I mean, think about it, guys. We're just pulling string through a loop. It's just in a different direction. And by wrapping the needle in the way I told you, by going over it instead of like under it or whatever, it just places that stitch on your needle in the correct orientation so you don't get twisted stitches. All right. So just like before, I mean, look, I'm just knitting off of stitches on my left hand needle. I'm just pulling yarn through a loop. And now I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm going to the back leg and then pulling yarn through a loop. Yarn through a loop. Yarn through a loop. Yarn through a loop. It's the same idea. It's just like if it was a knitting machine, right? Going back and forth. This is exactly what it does. It's pretty cool. It's hypnotic, somebody says. Yeah, I feel that way too, actually. I probably have 3 inches here. Hold on, let me see. What am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to end with a wrong side. So I got to end after a purl row. So let me knit back. And then I will work the knit 2 togethers, which at this point we're pretty good at, right? This would be if I was purling. And you guys, I mean, here, if you're kind of lost, if you're like, I don't get it, think of it this way. If I were to turn my work, it looks just like if I were purling, right? See, my yarn is, or my needles are through the stitch as if to purl, and I'm coming over my needle, right? Over my needle. It's the same idea when I flip back this way. It's the exact same thing. I'm going into the stitch through the back leg, and I'm yarning over my needle. So if you're ever like stuck, you could flip your work back and forth just to make sure you're doing the correct stitch. But I mean, it's the same thing. You're just doing it a different way. Pretty neat, right? I know that when I learned it, I was like, this is the bomb. Okay, so end after a wrong side row. So now we're going to knit 2 together all the way across and then end with a knit 1. So we're going to get to 6 stitches. So I'm just knitting 2 together all the way across. And then knit 1. And then it says knit 1 row and then break off. So just like before, apparently. We'll knit these 6 stitches. And then we will leave a nice long tail to thread through those 6 stitches again. And where is my scissors? All right, pro tip, guys. Add a pom-pom to your scissors and you will never lose them. Just if you don't know that already, now you know. If you don't know, now you know. Okay, take our needle, thread our yarn onto our needle, and we will pop it through all these. And then this little pom-pom at the top here, I mean, it looks like you guys should know how to do those. We're just knit front and backs, and then 4 rows of garter stitch, and then knit 2 togethers. All right, so there's that. And just like on the pickle, we're going to seam this together, but this time we could use Kitchener stitch if we wanted to, or we could just do whip stitch. I think I would be more inclined just to do a whip stitch, because if you look at this pickle right here, see how the hat comes down? So you're going to cover up that little spot anyways. So I would seam it up and then you're just going to pop it down there. So it's going to be hidden. So I wouldn't waste time trying to do any sort of a Kitchener stitch. I would just whip it together and whip it good. So these are the jokes, people. It's almost 9 o'clock at night. So you just put it down there. And as far as the pom-pom, I mean, it's just a tiny bit of a thing. So it looks like you just cast on 3 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, and then knit front and back 3 times. So we're going to get to 6 stitches. So we know how to do the knit front and backs, right? Like at this point, we should be pretty good at this. And honestly, if you just wanted to get a bit of fluff and add it to it, you probably could do that too. And then it says we're just going to do garter stitch for 4 rows. So garter stitch, guys, is just knitting. We're just going to knit 4 rows. So this time we do have to turn because we are knitting, right? Because I'm just knitting, so just turn my work. See how the double points make it easy just to flip it around on camera? That's why I'm using them. They're just easy to use. Was that 3? I think that was 3. I think I have 1 more. If not, no big deal, right? I mean, if anything, you guys have learned that it's really okay to fudge things, especially when you're doing any sort of amigurumi piece. All right, so we have 4 rows, and now we're going to knit 2 together all the way across to bring it rapidly closed. So we'll knit 2 together all the way across. Now it says thread yarn through. So I can pop that out. I mean, we know how to do this, right? Strings everywhere, but we can use these strings to sew the hat onto the pickle too. And then as far as the face, you guys, I mean, you could do anything you want. If you wanted to use safety eyes, you could just make sure you add those before you seam up your pickle all the way, or you could do the French knot, pretty easy. So you just pull this close, and to shape it like a pom-pom, I'll be honest with you guys, usually I just tie the ends. I'm going to show you. If you just tie the ends, it'll pull it. If it doesn't want to flip around on you, it'll pull it kind of closed, and then use your tails here to kind of pull those in, and you'll just shape it like a little like a little puff ball there. And then once you seam this, just add it to the top when you're seaming that all down. See how cute that is? I mean, that's it. That's how you make a pickle, y'all.
So cute.
Yeah. Plus all the extras, all the, that's how you fix stitches. That's how you knit backwards. Yeah, there you have it.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Marley, for another wonderful class.
All right, you're welcome. I hope everybody liked it. I hope you like your pickle. I hope you share it with us.
And thank you everybody for joining another Michaels Community Classroom. Check back online for more classes at michaels.com/online classes. And we hope to see you guys again.
All right, cool. Bye,
Awesome.
everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
See you next Tuesday.